Hi there everybody, welcome to another Indycar. I'm Gordon Ross. It's the 11th of July 2019. I'm afraid I'm sitting in what looks like a bit of a dark car, but it's actually just because the rain clouds are gathering over Glasgow at the moment. Anyway, the news today is, well, it's complicated. It's coming from all directions at once. We've got a story that the British Royal Navy destroyer has got between three Iranian gunboats and a British registered tanker in the Straits of Hormuz today, and actually pointed their guns at the Iranian boats as a gesture for them to leave quickly and get out of the way. So the tensions in the Gulf of Hormuz, or in the Straits of Hormuz, are getting higher by the day, as various navies from various western states are patrolling up and down the Straits of Hormuz, trying to prevent Iranian gunboats from impeding the path of tankers heading out of the Gulf. Is this a problem? Is it all sabre rattling? Well, yeah, it is. It's all sabre rattling on all sides. Iranian gunboats are patrolling up and down the centre of the Straits of Hormuz because Iranian waters lie basically to the north of the centre line of the Straits of Hormuz. And because of that, they patrol up and down that. That's basically a maritime border for the Iranians. But it's also a major waterway for all kinds of oil tankers going in and out of the Gulf past Oman. And of course, it's a strategic route for oil coming to the west. So it is important. But is it worth going to war over it? Is there any point in the British government provoking Iran any further? Iran is already being provoked by the United States withdrawing from the nuclear deal, and basically the European Union being stuck in between an argument between Iran and the USA. Now, the Iranians, as you know, have been processing uranium and enriching it, which is a precursor to manufacturing nuclear weapons, but it's also a byproduct of their nuclear program. And what they've said is that they are not holding back on reprocessing this fuel, and they now have too much of it in breach of the agreement. And they are wanting the Americans to come back to the negotiating table, and the Europeans, they're wanting some more support from the Europeans. Now, it's a big mess at the moment. Tensions in the Middle East, again, have been ramped up, mostly by the West, mostly by Donald Trump, and now by Donald Trump's lapdog, the United Kingdom. Are we going to war? Who knows? Well, it's just another one of those things that the British government drags us into now and again. Whenever America wants to have a war, they get their proxies in the British Navy and the British Air Force to get things started. I don't think it's going to happen, but you never know. Also today, we learned, well, there's just so many things going on at once, it's hard to know where to start. Yesterday I was saying that I feared that we were heading out of, not only out of the EU, but being unable to get back in again because we might not have a functioning government. Now, a friend on the independence movement called Garrett Lanark has set me straight today. He's published a little post in which he points out something which actually should have been obvious to me, but I completely forgot about, which is that the Scottish government, the Scottish Parliament, if you like, the people that we elect to run Scotland, actually sit at Westminster. These are the 59 MPs that are at Westminster. And if by misfortune we waited until Brexit happened, didn't have a referendum, and Holyrood was effectively shut down by the Conservative government, and David Mundell was put in charge of running Scotland, we would still have a government, and we would still have a Scottish Parliament. It's just the 59 of them would be in Westminster. So all it would be required, as Garrett was pointing out, is for these 59 individuals to be brought back from Westminster and to deliberate on organising the new either referendum or election, whatever it was that we wanted to have. Now, it's a possibility, technically, I suppose, that could happen because, as Garrett points out, technically they are the Parliament of Scotland, which, as a part of the Union, basically sits in the chamber with the English Parliament and takes part in such debates as affect the Scottish people. But if the Scottish people are now going to be run by the London government, and that basically is shutting out all of the devolved assembly and ending it, then that would leave only the 59 MPs at Westminster as Scottish parliamentary officials. So they could, in theory, debate and pass legislation because they are still, if you like, the top chamber, the senior chamber of Scottish Parliament. If you imagine the devolved Parliament being like the House of Commons and our MPs being a little bit like the House of Lords or something similar, a higher upper chamber, then we do still have some kind of functioning government. But would it be enough to actually call a referendum? That is debatable, and I don't know if Garrett's right about that, whether it could be done. We would need to have those 59 MPs meet somewhere else in Scotland where they could deliberate and pass laws with the highest legal figures in Scotland to make sure the legislation that was passed was legitimate and was competent. That is something that I think none of us would really want to see. A kind of government unofficially running Scotland from London, and our own government bringing out legislation in contravention to that, and this would be a colossal mess, a political crisis of unprecedented proportions. But then again, the whole situation is of unprecedented proportions anyway, because no deal Brexit, we're now told, if Boris Johnson does take the United Kingdom out of the European Union without agreeing a future trading agreement with the European Union, then John Major has said he will sue Boris Johnson for the damage he's going to cause to the British economy, because he feels that it's unconstitutional and it overrides the will of Parliament. Now in England, remember, Parliament in England is sovereign, and that means that even Boris Johnson is not above the will of Parliament. Supposedly, according to their unwritten, non-existent constitution, Boris Johnson can't do this. So John Major has waded into this mess, saying that if we're dragged out without a deal, then he will sue Johnson personally and perhaps his cabinet as well for the catastrophe that might ensue. Big talk, really, from a former unelected Tory leader. I mean, if you think about it, John Major was the unelected successor to Margaret Thatcher. John Major never won an election to get into power as the Prime Minister. He did do some good, by the way, Major. He was largely responsible for laying the British side of the groundwork for the Good Friday Agreement, so he has got some credit to his name. However, I think in the case of Johnson versus Major, I think Major would win it. I mean, probably hands down, Major's got the high ground here. But it leaves Scotland again in this mess. What do we do? Are we waiting for things to happen? How long do we wait? What happens when Boris Johnson becomes the supreme ruler of the universe? Is Nigel Farage going to be made ambassador? Well, the bookies say yes, he probably is. The bookies today have come out with, in one case, odds of 10 to 1 for Farage becoming the next ambassador, and in another 3 to 1 made him the favourite. So he went from third favourite to favourite overnight. And Nigel Farage has been uncharacteristically coy about whether he would accept this job, muttering that it would need to be somebody who was trusted by the White House and who had good relationships with the people and best friends, obviously, with the president would be good. So it's not unlikely that we could end up with Farage as our ambassador in Washington. And as the papers are fond of saying today, and even the arch-unionist newspaper, the Scotsman, has today characterised this as a coup, as Boris Johnson staging a soft coup in the United Kingdom by engineering the departure of this ambassador to make room for his placeman, Nigel Farage, would complete the triumvirate of evil, as I would call it, between Johnson, Farage and Trump, the three right-wing disaster capitalists who want to drive the country into the ground, wreck the economy, and then make money in the process by manipulating the markets, the money markets, the investment markets, and so on. And I've heard from another alert reader and watcher of the programme this morning who is involved in independent financial advice sort of market. And they were telling me that at the moment, most of the IFAs, the independent financial advisors in the UK, are advising their investors to take their money out of UK investments and put it elsewhere. So you can see that the way things are going at the moment is the lifeblood is being sucked out of the UK by Brexit in preparation for it to be dissected and picked over by the hawks of the United States, aggressive corporate world. And this is precisely what Johnson, Farage and Trump want. These are millionaire business people, or just millionaires, who want to make more and more money for themselves and their chums. And the rest of us basically can all starve in the ditch as far as they're concerned. But this is what Brexit has become. This is not what people of England voted for, but this is what they're being given. And this is something which we definitely do not want to accept in Scotland. There's been some argument over whether or not the European Union has had any role in the creation of the Scottish Parliament. It's had a role historically in all kinds of moves towards Scottish independence and Scottish home rule. But at the end of the day, the European Union wanted to see devolution to the smaller countries and regions of all of the nations of the European Union. And that was across the board. The accepted story that somehow or other it was only the convention, the Scottish Devolution Convention, if you like, in Scotland in 1988, which started this up. The Constitutional Convention in Scotland, which was begun by Kenyon Wright and others, was successful in arguing that Scotland should have a form of home rule. And what we ended up with was the devolution package, which the Labour Party created after being pressured by both the voters who wanted this and also the European Union who wanted this to happen as well. And whether people accept the version of it that's printed or not, the facts are there that there was pressure from all sides for devolution to happen. And once we leave the European Union, the pressure from abroad for devolution to remain has gone. Whether or not you agree that the European Union was directly responsible for it or not, there was definite pressure from the Council of Europe on Great Britain to give Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland a form of devolution so that the regions of these countries were adequately represented and also adequately represented with MEPs in Europe. Big, complicated situation it is. People research it all the time. But the fact of the matter is that Brexit throws the whole lot out with the bathwater. It doesn't matter what the history of this was. Brexit destroys it overnight, and the Tories will rewrite history anyway, and they will also rewrite the rules to suit the new situation, and we will be hung out to dry if we don't move fairly soon. Is it going to be too late if we wait for Brexit to happen and then try and vote for independence? I think we run an enormous risk of that happening. My guess is that if an independence referendum is announced, the timescale of it is announced and organised just before Brexit, then it would be almost impossible for the UK government to try to stop that referendum by destroying the Holyrood Parliament and closing that down, because that would be a clear denial of democracy, and that is something that neither the European Union nor other countries in the United Nations would tolerate. It would make England's chances of getting a trade deal anywhere in the world with anybody else almost impossible. So it's touch and go. I mean, we'll wait and see. I think my guess is that we will see some kind of vote called, whether it's an election or a referendum, shortly after Boris Johnson has been crowned the supreme ruler of Brexiteria, and Nigel Farage has been made his lieutenant in America. After that's done and we have a clear view of what the Johnson administration wants to do, then I think we'll see a date set. And that date will concentrate the minds both on our side and in the United Kingdom's side of things as well. Remember, there hasn't been any date. There's no actual formal campaigning going on, and we're already well past 53, 54, 57%. Some people saying 62, 63, even as high as 72% for leaving the UK if there's a no-deal Brexit. Pressure's on. Who knows what will happen next, but the situation globally is very complicated at the moment, and eventually the new world order that comes out of this will contain three superpowers: America, India and China. And we really have to decide, okay, Europe is going to be in there as well, but it's not as big as any of those three. It's almost as big, but it's a bigger market, let's put it that way. Europe doesn't have the population power that some of these supercontinents have, but what it does have is it has a developed self-contained market into which people have to join and trade in a way which is collective, which is unusual. But it means that we end up then with four superpowers: America, Europe, China and India. The Americans are trying to neutralize Europe because they want to control all of the commerce in the West, as we would call it, the liberal, neoliberal West. And eventually that will include India. So there's a great deal of tension going on all around the world at the moment. People shifting around, trying to establish new links and new connections. Britain is going to be at the whim of the United States, though, after Brexit, because it will be in its weakest position that it's ever been in, probably weaker than Scotland was at the time in 1707, after the Darien project had been sabotaged by both Spain and England, and Scotland had lost almost half of the nobility's funding as a result. And then they were in a position, obviously, to bribe the nobility to sell Scotland out. This time it's England and Wales that will be in that position. When Brexit happens, whoever is largest and comes along first and says, we want the NHS, we want this, we want that, they're going to be the ones who end up running England and Wales. But Scotland wants to step outside of that and not allow it to happen to us again. We don't want to be the lame duck of Europe, as we once were in 1707. Let's not make the mistakes of the past and repeat them. This time we see it coming. It's been coming for 3 years. We've had plenty of time to prepare for it, just the same as the Tories have had plenty of time to prepare for it. We need to be ready too. But we need to be ready with our own plans, and we must not allow the United Kingdom to drag us down the drain with them, because they're circling it, as I said, at the moment. The United Kingdom is circling the drain, and as soon as it goes down that plug hole, we must make sure that we are not attached to them when they go. I don't want to be seeing Scotland having all of its wonderful industries picked over and bought up and hoovered up by American corporations just because we were stupid enough to stay attached to the United Kingdom. I'll see you later. Have a good day. Bye-bye.